going to hear from some leaders at the moment, because it's one thing to hear about or read charts and quotes. It's another thing to hear it from the leaders themselves. So you have a couple of Canadian leaders here, Max.
Yes, so and just to say, again, Sean, like this point about a lot of we do paint a bleak picture, but I think that is very purposeful because I think a lot of this flies under the radar yet. So, let's work together to build a better picture and support these amazing principles. So yes, I would like to showcase the voices of two stakeholders in the system. Doriana Rosati is a former principal and now a coach. And Andrea McComb is Director of Professional Learning and Development for the BC Principals Vice Principals Association. I have the pleasure of working with both of them, and we held a webinar a few months ago, and there's some clips here that I wanted to showcase with respect to their view on how principals are doing. Just putting a plug in, a lot more insights are shared on about a 30-minute video that would be available on our YouTube channel. I'll send a link as a follow-up to this because I think that there was so much good stuff they were sharing. But here's a good summary just to get us started. So please go ahead.
Exactly.
The reality is that the demands are increasing and the stress is intensifying. And there is an awful lot of concern over school safety. And so with my background in safe schools, well-being and equity, there's a loss as to how to make a big impact there. And then there's a heightened sense of fear, not just from the incidents themselves and the conflict that comes with the advocates around those incidents, but a lack of community support that might have existed before, say with police, et cetera, and inconsistent messaging that and in service really or lack thereof by the school districts that they're working with. And so there's a real obvious awareness that people have of what they ought to be able to do, they feel they ought to be able to do, and knowing how to do it. And if they do it, what the consequences are of quote unquote getting it wrong.
What I'm seeing here is most of the reach outs for what I would call that professional side of coaching versus the system level coaching that we're engaging in. It People are reaching out because they've moved through the progression to principal really quickly. And even though they feel efficacious as a leader and believe they can do it, they're just slammed with so much all at the same time that feeling equipped is where the nugget is. And so they reach out to feel more equipped, more resourceful, and to be able to chunk out how do you look at this tidal wave that's coming at me, and how do I eventually move beyond that managerial role to being the leader I want to be. And that's number one, is because we're having people new to role so quickly in so many jobs. And we're seeing that level of support, that paying attention, what you're all saying about that isolation and loneliness is a real impact for a lot of our leaders. We ask one question, like, do a metaphor strategy, and it's very interesting across the system, no matter where you are in your experience level, that people talk about isolation. The other thing that we're seeing is that a lot of the people that we're losing at the experienced end, when we think about retention, is that they're looking for a way. They may not want to move up the steps and go beyond, but they're looking for a re-engagement, something to be passionate about, something to dig in and figure out who they want to be now that they feel like they've kind of got this. And it doesn't mean that every day is easy, because every day is busy, but they're looking for that next step to nurture their passion and their commitment to their work. The other thing we're seeing is that that some of the people that have gone to, say, remote areas are feeling like they're not connected. So then what they do is when you look at the dimmer switches of their energy and effort, the dimmer switch of work goes like this. The dimmer switch of relationships and life go like this. And the dimmer switch to themselves and commitment to themselves goes down, because it's easier just to stay completely engrossed in work than deal with that isolation. And so that isolation really being top of mind. And the other thing we're seeing is that when people are new to role and maybe not understanding the larger context, that they end up getting feedback, harsh feedback that hurts their soul. And so supporting people in working through something, they've become self-aware. And now I don't know what to do about it because they're dealing with the hurt of becoming self-aware in a really harsh way. And supporting them through that to find their agency is really the crux of where we're seeing sort of that professional piece. Because I have two roles. I support principals in learning coaching skills and informal coaching skills, but I also support in a coaching capacity individually.
Wonderful. Okay. Let me see if
I could listen to them all day long. Two exceptionally articulate leaders who, you know, have that shared passion as we do and concern for supporting principals. And I mean, just to get started, Sean, I mean, what I heard there, this violence in schools issue continues to worsen in a post-pandemic world. I mean, if nobody can feel safe in schools and a principal's in charge of that, imagine the strain that's putting on principals and vice principals. You know, interesting point about keeping our experienced late career principals invigorated and in the role. And then, you know, hire too young too soon, you know, is a theme that I think, you know, we can continue to explore. They're human. They need nurturing. They need support. And, you know, the public and public education, you can get pressure from all sides. And, you know, on a daily basis, that's going to take its toll. So, you know, just a beautiful articulation from both of them on that front.
Yeah, exactly. And the words that I picked up as well were similar. It was talking about the isolation, the being on your own, not having people to turn to. It was wanting to develop agency, so some self-control over the situation and your own well-being. And it's changing that managerial role into a leadership role. All right, I want to hear from, I believe this is the right video, so we'll see. I want to hear from Mark Brackett. We had him on again a couple of episodes back, talking about the social emotional awareness and development, and also what kind of leader people want to work underneath as well.
The reality is,
we're always going to make, here we go. Second time lucky.
The number one characteristic was someone who listens. Number two, non-judgmental. Everybody just wants to be around people who just stop judging me. Just let me be who I am. Number three, empathic and compassionate. And what I've been thinking a lot about that since looking at the data. And what I realize is that, think about that. Good listener, non-judgmental, and compassionate. So that means these are all people who are other-oriented. How many of you feel like you'd be a little healthier, a little happier, if your partners or if your bosses were better listeners, less judgmental, and more compassionate?
Yeah, and you can also hear more from Mark Brackett. There's a longer episode that we have there as well. And we're not giving partnership and marital advice here, but think of the workplace as well as a relationship community. You're trying to develop those relationships, know who people are. Just like it's ironic in a way that we know that forming relationships with the students is going to benefit them and their teaching and learning. And we subconsciously know the same thing matters for our principals, our staff, and our educators, but for some reason we don't always lean into it.
The number
Yeah,
one,
really good points, Sean. I mean, just what I took from that. I mean, listening, it sounds simple, but it's not. It's a skill that needs to be developed. And I think it's a lifelong refresher course on listening. But what I also heard from Mark was elements of psychological safety in the
Mm.
workplace. That's a big focus in Canada right now. And, I just put it to you this way. One mildly negative exchange or turn of phrase in any professional relationship, you're going to carry that home with you. You're going to carry it, and you're going to perseverate over it. You're going to lose sleep over it. And I think we also underestimate that those exchanges, if they don't go well, what toll that's going to take on a regular basis. So I just wanted to make that point. I thought that was a brilliant little clip there.
Yeah, and it reminds me actually what you were saying just then of a quote that I've loved for years from James Comer that talks about with every interaction, you're either building community or you're breaking it down. And so every time you have a communication, not saying that everyone has to be positive, but understand the role that you have when you have conversations with students, with families, with principals, with others.